This morning, instead of giving a homily based on the gospel reading, I decided that I'd like to take a few moments to talk about something that happened this week that's gone viral on the internet because it was so inspiring, so amazing, that I said to myself, wow, we just have to look at what happened there because it's so helpful to all of us in the situation we are in our society today. And before I go any further, I want to explain something very carefully because the incident that I have to talk with has something to do with politics. And whenever a priest preaches on anything that's even remotely connected with anything political, there's always somebody who sends him nasty emails or angry phone calls. Father, you're preaching about politics again? You got to stop that. You can't do that. Blah, 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 blah. They're yelling on about it, and they're way off base. But they don't know it because they don't understand what it means to preach on politics, what a priest is allowed to do and what he's not allowed to do. So let me take just a moment or two to explain to you first off what preaching politics is and isn't, and what by U.S. law a priest is allowed to do and not allowed to do. First of all, a priest is always free to speak about moral and faith values. So anything affecting our faith and our morals, he is perfectly free and has free rein to speak about that. That's what we do as priests in our homilies. And sometimes political things will encroach upon our faith and morals, and especially if it should happen to be that one of the politicians who is doing that happens to be Catholic, and they're teaching something that contradicts the church's teaching, and they tell us that, oh no, this is actually in line with Catholic teaching. Well, not only does a priest have the right to call that politician out and say, no, that politician is mistaken, they are not representing the church, he also has the duty to do that, to defend his flock from the errors of somebody who is misrepresenting the Catholic faith to them. And so a priest can even call out an individual and say, what that person is saying is not true on this or that. And he's perfectly fine according to his rights, according to law. What a priest cannot do is tell you whom to vote for, or obviously stump for an individual candidate, or to talk about issues that are purely partisan and have nothing to do with faith and morals. So with that in mind, let me tell you what I want to talk about this morning, and I assure you it has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with preaching politics. I am not preaching politics in this, so please don't send me any nasty emails or give me angry phone calls or anything accusing me of preaching politics, okay? I am not preaching politics this morning, capiche? But it has to do with something that happened last weekend at the memorial service for Charlie Kirk. And right away, I have to say something else because I know that memorial service was pretty long. I think it went on about 2 hours, and many different people got up and spoke at it. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I've heard some people say, one or two people said something that maybe wasn't appropriate, and they were a little upset by what that person may have said. And I don't know. I didn't listen to any of the other talks. I only heard the one thing I want to talk about. But lest anybody come up to me and say, Father, well, you talked about that, but how about what so-and-so said about that? Do you approve of what that person said in their talk? I don't know. I didn't hear it. I don't know what they said. I have nothing to say or do about anything else that may or may not have taken place during that memorial service. I only want to talk about one little thing. Priests have to be so careful with what we say. It seems whenever we open our mouths, there's always somebody who wants to stick a gun in it and pull the trigger on us. But at any rate, it had to do with the eulogy given by his widow, Rika Kirk. And she said something in there that was absolutely amazing. Now remember, this is a woman who in one instant lost her husband. An assassin took him out, we presume because he disagreed with Charlie Kirk's conservative political views. And of course I would say the same thing if Charlie Kirk had been a liberal activist, okay, and somebody had assassinated him. What the person's politics were is immaterial. The fact is somebody took his opposition to the point of using weapons and violence and killed somebody because he disagreed with what he had to say. And I think we can all condemn that unilaterally and say there's a way to deal with political things. We talk about them, we debate them, but we never resort to violence and certainly not to weapons to take out our political opponents, whichever side of the coin or the political spectrum we would be on. But with that being said, Here was a woman who lost her husband very suddenly, and her 2 young children, a little girl and a little boy who are still to be carried in arms, lost their father and will grow up without any real memories of their father, maybe only vague ones at best. And if she had gotten up that day and said, "As for that young man who took my husband's life, I hope they find him guilty, and I hope he fries for what he did, because he ruined my life and the life of my children," I don't think too many people would have condemned her for that. I think everybody would have said, well, look what happened to this poor woman. We could understand her pain. But that's not what she did. If you heard or saw what she did, how she responded was amazing. She said, at one point, she says, the first thing Jesus said from the cross was, "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." And the tears were welling up in her eyes as she said this. And then she paused and said, "That young man," and she started to cry, and she said, "I forgive him. I forgive him because it is what Christ did, and it is what Charlie would do. The answer to hate is not hate. The answer we know from the Gospels is love." And she received a standing ovation for that from everybody who was there at that memorial service. And as I saw that, I said to myself, wow, what a positive, powerful witness to the gospel of Christ that this woman just gave. And that could not have been easy for her to get up there and forgive the young man who took her husband's life. And people responded to that, and since it had happened, the response of people has gone viral all over the internet, of people responding positively, people saying it's brought me back to God, it's renewed my faith. I remember hearing of one man who said, "I haven't been to church in years, but this Sunday I'm taking my suit out of the closet and I am going to church because this woman showed me the power of the gospel, the power of Jesus, and I need that power in my life. If he could help her forgive him, he can help me in my life." And more people have been saying that. And I said, that's what we need to have. More and more people giving witness to the power of Jesus' word and how it can change our lives and change the world for the better if we take it seriously. Sadly, we have too often dismissed the gospel of Jesus as pie-in-the-sky theology of nice-sounding things that would be better in a different world, but unrealistic in the world we're living in, or nice words from some philosophical guy or some guru like Jesus who said things years ago, but they really just will not make sense and will not make any difference in our world today. And Rika Kirk showed us, no, the gospel of Jesus works. And you and I, she has challenged, whether she meant to or not, she's challenged all of us to realize the power of Christ's message, that you and I have to be the instruments of that, the ambassadors for Christ, bringing his message to the world by actually living it out. Not just giving lip service to what Jesus says in the gospel, but especially when times are difficult and we face one of those crises, actually following what Jesus says and loving and forgiving our enemies and praying for our persecutors. If more and more people could do that, then the world would be a better place. And all the hate that we're seeing in the world, and you know as well as I, that our country is becoming more and more polarized, and the name-calling and the anger and the violence is now leading to weapons and people getting killed. And we've noticed in several situations now, some of the recent mass shootings or individual shootings, people are now taking the bullets and the other things that are associated with it and writing the names, the labels of the people that have led them to this anger, that they righteously feel once somebody has branded them with this label, that they have the right to take them out, and they're resorting to murdering people in the name of whatever they believe in, and it's killing innocent children like we saw in Minnesota, the ICE agents that were killed last week, let alone Charlie Kirk. And it's getting worse and worse, and you and I, the Lord is relying on us to be the instruments of change. You and I, with the gospel message, faithful Christians throughout the country and throughout the world, have to be the ones that call the world out on this and say, enough. Enough. We've had enough of the anger. We've had enough of the hatred. Now it's leading to weapons and bullets. And we have to put a stop to this, and we have to put a stop to it now. Because the answer to anger is not more anger. The answer to hate is love. And sadly, I get so distressed when I even see good Christians, faithful Catholics who go to church every Sunday, sadly following along in the same trend as so many other people and just giving into the political whims and the name-calling and the branding. And when I see things that are posted on Facebook and emails I receive, I'm pulling my hair out of my head because people are sending these things around feeling perfectly justified. And I want to say to them, you're only feeding the hate that is killing people. And you and I, we have to stop sending around the things that are leading to more of the hatred. And what is the biggest instance of this, or the culprit of it all? The branding, the labeling people. And how much of it have we seen going around in our world today? And in politics especially, it's getting out of control. And if you disagree with someone, the best way to get people to turn away from that candidate and maybe vote for you is label that person. Put a stigma on them of something evil, so people will say, oh, well, I could never vote for that person because that person is a so-and-so. And they feel perfectly rationalized or justified by rejecting that person and not voting for them. But then other people who are a little unstable take it to the next level and think they're justified in shooting and killing that person. And what are the labels? We've seen them all over the place, and they come from both sides of the aisle. No party is exempt from it, but labeling people. He's a fascist. She's a communist. He's a racist. He's sexist. She's this. He's that. How many of those things do we see going around? The last presidential election, we had enough name-calling to last a lifetime. And it doesn't settle anything. It only foments more anger, more hatred. And when you and I, as faithful Christians, send them around, these angry memes and other things in Facebook posts, in emails, and all sorts of other things on social media, you and I become the ones that are helping the evil thrive. And we don't realize what we're doing, but it's time we say to ourselves, enough. You and I have got to stop sending around those angry emails and messages about politicians. It's time we start responding to the anger and the hate with constructive dialogue and with love. It seems in our society we have completely lost the ability to have constructive dialogue or to respectfully disagree with someone else. All too easily, people just resort to hate and name-calling, and it's only getting worse. And my friends, whenever we send something like that around, we're doing the devil's work. We're continuing and fostering the hate that he is fostering, that he is trying to use to divide and conquer us, and that will be what would destroy our nation. No, my friends, we need to be the ones that respond not with more anger, not with hatred, not with name-calling, but with rational argumentation and love and respect. Certainly in political differences of opinion, by all means, let's discuss politics, but discuss it logically, point for point, not just with name-calling and branding, because that's only making things worse. So what do we do when it comes to politicians with whom we disagree? Especially sometimes when those politicians call themselves Catholics and are pretending that, or trying to make us believe that what they say is really the authentic Catholic teaching and not what the Church teaches. Well, what I try to do with them is, first of all, I look at the errors that they're making, the things they're teaching, and I pray for them. And I say, Lord, help that person realize that he or she is advocating a policy, whatever it may be, that is going to ruin the world and our nation. Because our moral beliefs are not just for Catholics. The Catholic message is not saying only Catholics can't do these things. These are things for everyone, for all the world. And Christ's moral message is for everyone. And we are meant to be the instruments by which the Lord's truth is taught to the ends of the earth. And sadly, some people will sacrifice what they believe according to their religion for political expediency, because they know they won't get elected if they don't teach this or that. So they advocate something that contradicts our faith simply for their own position, so that they will get the votes and get elected. And I pray for them that they will come and see the mistake they're making before it's too late for themselves, specifically when they die and stand in judgment before the Lord, and the Lord Jesus has to call them out for not using their opportunity, their position and the golden opportunity as a candidate for office or somebody in office to defend the truth of Christ. And instead they use that position to contradict the truth of Christ. So first I pray that they will come to realize the mistake they are making. Secondly, I also pray to make sure that I'm not falsely assuming that somebody is teaching something wrong or right simply because they're the candidate I am voting for or voting or not voting for. Rarely is one candidate 100% correct and the other one 100% wrong. And first, I think we need to avoid thinking that just because somebody votes for a particular candidate, that he or she is automatically agreeing with everything that person says or believes, nor should we think we have to. Sometimes in politics, we're choosing the lesser of two evils. And sometimes we may look at a candidate and say, well, I agree with this candidate on this issue, that, and the other, but I don't agree with this candidate on these other things. And the other candidate, I don't agree on these things, but these things I do agree with. And then look at both of them and make a decision as to which of these candidates we think is more in a situation to be able to foster the positive growth in America, the moral life, and the stability of our nation that we want, and not assuming that one person has all the answers and that we have to espouse everything they say, but vote for whichever one we think is better qualified to lead the nation in the direction we want it to go. And so I ask the Lord to help me to make sure that I'm not automatically embracing something that is against the gospel simply because the candidate I choose to vote for is endorsing that. No, it's perfectly fine to say, well, I voted for this person because he or she is more in line with what I believe in than his or her opponent. And we don't have to feel like it's 100%. We have to embrace everything about that candidate in order to vote for them. So I do that, and I pray for them that they will see the mistake they are making, and that the people that are elected to office will be fostering the growth in America that we want to see. But you know what? It's not just in politics where we have people who say and do harmful things. In fact, most of us are probably hurt more each and every day by individuals in our lives, family members, neighbors, people in school or workplaces, or others who have done things to hurt us, maybe even to the point of saying that person has ruined my life. And a lot of what we said in politics can apply to our personal lives as well, to deal with people whom we might even see as our enemies. We've all been hurt by people, and I myself am no exception to that. I have had people over the years say and do things to me that have hurt me to the core, that have really been harmful. How do I deal with it? Well, I don't say this to you to make myself look holy like some living saint or anything like that. Okay, that's the furthest thing from my mind. But with God as my witness, I can honestly tell you that this is what I do whenever somebody has hurt me. Once the anger subsides and the pain of what the person said or did to me goes away, I pray about it, and the first thing I pray for the other person. And I say, first of all, Lord, is there anything in what that person said or did, even if the way they presented it to me was so inappropriate and so uncharitable, is there a glimmer or a seed of truth there that I need to embrace? Because if there is, then maybe what they said or did to me, I wish they had done it in a more charitable way, but at least they've shown me something positive that I can embrace, and I can use it to make myself a better person. And so something good has come out of that moment. And if not, if I look upon it and I say, well, no, there was really just nothing positive about what the person said or did, well, then I just pray for them and say, Lord, I hope that he or she someday realizes just how much they hurt me and feels sorry for it. And it may only be when that person dies and is standing in judgment before the Lord. But Lord, when they do stand there and realize they hurt me, and if they say, oh, Lord Jesus, help Father to forgive me, that, Lord, you'd be able to say to them, don't be afraid. Father forgave you years ago. First of all, it goes very well for me when I'm standing in judgment before the Lord, because the Lord can say, well done. You loved your enemies and prayed for your persecutors. But it also gives me peace here and now and for the rest of my life. Nobody can change what's happened in the past. If somebody has said and done something that hurt us, even if they're completely remorseful and come to us and apologize for what they said or did, we can't change it. What's happened, happened. But if we don't forgive the person, we let the pain of the past continue into the present and the future. And we become perpetual victims of what somebody once did to us. Sometimes we might feel perfectly justified in saying to somebody, even if they say to us, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? And we say, no, I will never forgive you for what you said or did for me. to me. And we might think that it's hurting the other person. But who is it really hurting? It's hurting ourselves. That person could at least pray before the Lord and say, well, Lord, I know I said or did something wrong, but I went to the other person, apologized, but he or she would not accept my apology. At least they can say, well, I went and I did the right thing, and they can move on in peace, and we are stuck holding the burden of the anger for the rest of our lives. So refusing to forgive someone else is like ourselves drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die from it. So, what does it mean to forgive somebody else? Well, it doesn't mean just ignore it, pretend it never happened. If we can do that, great. Then we're even stronger than we think we are. But it also doesn't mean to blame ourselves for it and say, well, I must have said or done something to make that person say or do that to me. No, sometimes people are just mean-spirited, and they do things that we did not deserve. It doesn't mean make light of it, dismiss it in any other way. Maybe we have to come to the person and say, hey, you know, what you said or what you did really hurt me, and I think you owe me an apology. And hopefully they will apologize, and then if they do, make sure we forgive them. Because that's the only way we're going to have peace, to be able to leave what happened in the past and move on and not let it continue to harm us. It means taking the higher road, meaning being better than what other people would do and say, no, while people might say I'm justified in not forgiving you, I will forgive you. Because that's what Jesus said. The first thing he said from the cross was, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He didn't say, Father, get them back for all the pain they harmed me or caused me. He didn't say that. He forgave them. Rika Kirk this week showed us how to do the same thing. And the Lord challenges you and me to do the same, to be willing to forgive our enemies and pray for our persecutors. It takes a lot of strength to do that. It's not a sign of weakness to forgive somebody. In fact, it's a sign of great strength. The weakness comes in not forgiving. The strength comes in living the way Christ teaches us to do. And so, my brothers and sisters, today, let it be our prayer that we will do everything we can to make sure we live the gospel each and every day, and that our world that is so filled with hate, our country that is becoming so polarized, that we will never do anything that foments and spreads the hatred and the anger in the world, but that we will start being the instruments of healing, the instruments of truth, the instruments of peace, as Christ has called us to do. Jesus told us from the cross to forgive. Rika Kirk showed us in her eulogy for her husband how to forgive. May we now go out and do the same. May Jesus Christ be praised, now and forever.